This is Curious Incident, a podcast for special needs families and your window into the world of special education. Special needs parenting can be challenging, and we want to make it easier by providing you with the resources you need to help your child. Let's delve deep into the world of learning differently with your host, special education attorney Adam Dayan.
I am thrilled to be sitting down with Anna Christodoulou from the Quad Preparatory School. Dr. Anna Christodoulou completed her doctoral studies in professional educational child and adolescent psychology at the University of London, where her thesis focused on how to support children's social and emotional skills at school. She has worked for years in several school settings in Greece, England, and the United States, serving a diverse population of children as a school psychologist. As Anna became increasingly fascinated by high-functioning children with social and emotional difficulties, she decided to devote her career in advocating for twice exceptional children at Quad Prep. She is Greek by background, enjoys anything associated with the sea and sun, and is a proud mother of now 3 girls. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Adam. It's great to be here. Thank you for your kind invitation.
Of course, it's great to have you. So let's jump right in. What does the phrase twice exceptional or 2E mean?
It is a very liberating term. And as we hear from parents, the moment they hear this word, it really makes sense for them. And they understand that this is exactly what their children are like. It is a word that describes children who are neurodiverse from 2 different angles. All of our students at a 2E school, they are gifted, so very superior from a cognitive perspective. And at the same time, they have learning differences of some sort. So that, in a school setting, they require different accommodations in order for them to be successful.
What are some examples of the kinds of issues that the bright children in your population who learn differently typically struggle with?
Yeah, so in addition to them being gifted, they also have learning differences of some sort. And this can be in many different areas. Our students might struggle with attention difficulties, so they might be in need of movement breaks or breaking down different steps for them so that they can sustain their attention. They might have social skills difficulties and might be in need of someone modeling the appropriate social behaviors. How do we start a conversation? How do we sustain a conversation? How do we join in playing with other students? These are all things that we teach our students. They might have anxiety. That's a very common thing that we see with our students. 2E students, because they are very gifted, they're used to things coming to them easily. So when something doesn't come to them easily, this can create a lot of anxiety for them, or changes in routine, in different structure. Different transitions can be anxiety-provoking for them as well. They might have executive functioning needs. How do I plan for a project? How do I execute? Where do I start from? What do I do? And they might also have specific learning disabilities in reading, writing, math, that might require more targeted work.
And I always emphasize this, I'll emphasize it here too, that a school district has a responsibility to focus on all of these areas, whether it's academic, emotional, executive functioning related. If any of these areas are problem areas or areas of difficulty for a student, the school district must address them, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
So when did twice exceptional first become recognized?
So it started about 30 years ago in California. There was a school called Bridges that was pretty much the first 2E school in the country, in the United States. And it was developed really for twice exceptional students. Quad Prep was founded in 2012, which was really early days of twice exceptional in New York City. And even though it is not an actual classification as we use it, it's not a DSM diagnosis, per se. A lot of neuropsychologists are using this term in their neuropsychological evaluations, and we find this extremely helpful for finding the right educational placement for them, because it captures both of those exceptionalities, and it is crucial to describe both aspects of their learning profile.
Absolutely. And we were discussing before that not everyone understands what twice exceptional or TUI means. Mm-hmm. Talk about some of the common misconceptions.
There are many, because it is a unique population of students. I believe there are two scenarios with twice exceptional learners to begin with. So there are students that their gifts mask their difficulties. And this is not to their benefit at the end of the day, because they don't have access to early intervention. They don't have access to the services that they actually need to be successful and to building all the skills that they need for the future.
People see that they're superior in some area and then overlook the areas of weakness that need attention.
Exactly. So, a teacher might say, so the student is above average in math. Why do they need services? I don't understand. But the emotional well-being of the students might suffer because they really have to work so hard, at different times to create these results. So that is one scenario. There is also another scenario that the difficulties mask their gifts. So it could be having some emotional regulation difficulties, for example, of refusing to do things because they're not interesting for them, or they find them boring or difficult, as I said before. So again, that does not serve them well, because we cannot really focus on their strengths, and we cannot build on these amazing gifts that they have.
And boring is such an interesting concept in this context, because it could mean multiple things. On the one hand, you could have a child who is superior and is feeling bored because they're ahead of what other children in the classroom are doing. On the flip side, you could have a student who's bored because they're experiencing some sort of difficulty, having trouble following what's happening in the classroom, and so it comes across as being bored. Has that been your experience too?
Absolutely. The way that parents describe it, it could be either way. And it's also the delivery. It is very important for these students what teacher they have. When I hear parents' journeys, they describe different years, and having a very good teacher who is really paying attention to all the specific strengths and interests of a student makes a huge difference for these kids. And then a different year that a teacher might be more strict, or very, to be precise, less flexible in their ways. This again can be a huge problem for the students.
Sure. It seems that some people think TUI means a gifted student with autism. Do you find that as well?
Yes, we do find that, and we always have a lot of parents who ask us if our school only serves autism as, that second exceptionality, and that's a big misconception. I would say actually that attention difficulties tends to be the most sort of dominant difficulty among our students. Or all the other things that we mentioned before. So it's really not just one thing.
And what about the idea that TUI students experience severe behavioral difficulties?
That is also a misconception that we hear a lot. Our students might have emotion regulation difficulties. They might experience big emotions, as reactions to things that maybe your average peer might not react, in the same ways. That is very different than being aggressive or having severe behavioral difficulties. So we do work with emotion regulation and talk to them about appropriate ways of reacting to different situations and how they can have access to what they need in appropriate ways. However, a student with severe behavioral difficulties would be better served in a therapeutic school.
Anna, what makes a TUI child unique?
I guess the answer to this would be the extent of their neurodiversity. They are...
Your eyes light up as you say that word.
I see them every day. And it's just, there are students that are nothing, anything actually, but ordinary. They are iconoclastic in their thinking. They're very creative learners. They are problem solvers. They are interested in finding how things work and making things better. They're very bold, in some things, and you need that in life, right? To have some boldness, about things.
Brilliant in various ways. Brilliant in their intelligence, brilliant in their creativity, brilliant in their problem-solving abilities. Let's go back to the phrase you mentioned in the beginning, iconoclastic in their learning. What do you mean by that?
They are outside-the-box thinkers. So... you will never get a response that you would expect. Sometimes they come up with these just amazing ideas and solutions about things. And it's very different. And these will be the people that will change the world, in the future. This is what we're striving to do. That
must be exciting to be on the forefront of that and to be in a role where you're shaping the lives of the kids, the children, the students who are going to be our future leaders.
It has been extremely rewarding to be in this position the last almost 8 years now, and to see how parents feel also after joining a community like ours and seeing their children happy in school is extremely rewarding.
Amazing. How can parents determine if their child is twice exceptional?
So a neuropsychological evaluation obviously is the best way, as it is a very comprehensive report that describes all areas of a child's development. I have to say, signs of twice exceptionality that we hear from parents are when students are thinking in very creative ways, when they're asking difficult questions in the classroom that maybe, in a classroom of 30 students, it is very hard to pause and kind of focus, on this question. They have very intense interests. They have passions. They get into projects, 1 month it can be history, another month it can be geography, and then the parents have to buy lots and lots of books, to satisfy that curiosity.
Feed that appetite.
Exactly. They tend to have also, at the same time, difficulty following the rest of, what everyone else is doing in the classroom plan. They might become engrossed, for example, in an activity that they do, and it might be very hard for them to transition to a different activity. Or they might choose to read a book instead of playing with other students, at recess.
Who wants to be like everybody else anyway?
Right? That's exactly what we think also as a school.
What information or materials does Quad Prep consider for admissions purposes?
We ask for a neuropsychological evaluation as part of our review, especially at the initial review level. We base our initial decisions a lot on that. We ask for a parent statement where parents have to respond to different questions about their children. We ask for an IEP if the child has an IEP. And we also ask for the report card so that we can see the academic achievement. For upper school students, we also ask for transcripts to be able to have sort of, very detailed information. We also ask for a consent form because as part of our review, we want to be able to speak to professionals who might know a child, including the teacher of the current school.
Sure, that makes a lot of sense. We're not going to delve further into the neuropsych evaluation right now, but I just want to say for our listeners, if you're wondering why that's the gold standard in this process, listen to episode 1 of the podcast. We did an episode with a neuropsychologist explaining the ins and outs of the neuropsych evaluation, and you'll get a sense for why that's so important in this process. Mm-hmm. Anna, how does a school for TUI students go about educating its students?
Well, I can only speak about how we go about it at Quad Prep, and I have to say, after 11 years of our school operating, we really believe that it has been a very successful model for our students. The difficult thing is that if parents go to different websites, sometimes you see that they look very similar. A lot of schools talk about personalization, individualization. They talk about the whole child and integration. So there are a lot of buzzwords. And for parents, it is very important to ask questions about how do different schools go about these things. How do you actualize what you promise and the words that you're using? In our school, we are highly personalized for our students, both from an academic perspective, because everyone has gifts all over the place. They might have gifts in many different areas, and very personalized with our psychosocial supports, because our students have very different learning differences. So one size really does not fit all. That is what we always keep in mind. And we also integrate academics and psychosocial supports at all times, because those two areas have to be hand in hand at all times for our students to be successful. When they are in a classroom activity and they learn math, something might get into the way from the psychosocial perspective. So two professionals, one focusing on academics and another focusing on psychosocial supports, need to be there at all times.
Let's talk a little bit more about psychosocial supports. What are they? What does that mean?
It means everything that I mentioned before with regards to the difficulties that students experience at school. So it could be a professional facilitating a movement break for them, or modeling an appropriate behavior, giving them the right language for different things, explaining to them how they can ask in appropriate ways for what works for them when they're learning. So anything, having a conversation with them before a subject that can be very anxiety-provoking for them. If a student is very anxious about math, then our psychosocial teachers can have a brief conversation with them before they have math, and it's a game changer. They will go into the activity feeling completely differently.
That sounds super important.
Mm-hmm. And the other thing is that we give them opportunities for enrichment from that gifted perspective. So, for example, we have a school-wide enrichment model called the Idea Lab in our school, which is an opportunity for them to delve into areas that they're very passionate about and create projects and do more research for these areas. And last but not least, we provide related services as part of our day, so that they don't really have to do these services in the afternoon. So we have occupational therapy, speech therapy, counseling, and social skills for all of our students.
Great. Before we move on from this topic, let's talk a little bit more about the Idea Lab. That sounds really cool. Can you give an example?
Yeah, so it could be a very elaborate Lego construction, for example, about something that they're very passionate about. Or it can be a project about the different bridges, in New York City or in the country. Or it could be about countries and history and different projects that they're very passionate about.
So an opportunity to take their giftedness through the lens of something they're very passionate about or interested in, and to give them that opportunity to work on it further.
Exactly. I remember the head of the lower school was mentioning at one of our tours the other day an example. A girl was very passionate about hairsprays and really thought that it was something that is very useful for girls, and she created a very natural version of it that did not have any chemicals or nothing, and that was with the help of another student, and they were able to create the actual product by the end of it.
Brilliant. That's brilliant. Can you discuss your educational philosophy?
We redefine the experience of school. at Quad Prep. It's a completely different story. It's a very progressive school, and it is a school that really sort of promotes the children's gifts. We really want to empower them to rise to the level of their extraordinary gifts without letting the other obstacles get into the way. And while we teach them all the strategies that they need that don't come naturally to them, executive functioning skills, somehow in your life you kind of figure it out. You try this, you try that, something works, something doesn't work. For our students, it is hard for them to come up with these strategies. So it is our job to teach them. It's the same with social skills or attention. How do I sustain my attention? By using different fidgets at appropriate times. So really teaching them what they need while we give them the opportunities to really explore and further develop their gifts.
Executive functioning skills, planning, and then executing can be a messy business even for neurotypical adults. So I think anybody can benefit from this type of support that you're talking about, where you work on those skills and make sure that you're able to plan and execute in your daily life.
Absolutely. Our head of school always says that it would be ideal if every child in the country had access to a personalized education like this. But of course, our students, most of them are in need of something like this in order to be successful.
Yes, and I love what you said, promoting the gifts and celebrating the individuals, right? That's what it's about, promoting the gifts and celebrating the individuals.
Exactly. They have to love who they are, and they have to feel very comfortable for who they are. There is nothing wrong with you if you need to stand up every now and then and stretch when you're learning. Asking for this in appropriate ways, having access to this in appropriate ways is what they need to be taught. There's nothing wrong. In your adult life, you can choose a job that fits your profile and how you learn best and what makes you happier. So why not when you're in school?
Absolutely. What strategies or techniques do you use?
Many. As I said before, not, one size fits all. So we have many tools in our tool case, and we try to use as appropriately with each of our students. We have best practices, very cutting edge. Also, all of this is new. So all of our programs are very innovative. And I can give you a couple of examples. For example, for executive functioning that we were talking about before, we have partnered with an amazing professional who is an expert in her field, Sarah Ward, for executive function, and she's helping us develop and further develop our curriculum. For social skills, we use practices from Social Thinking by Michelle Garcia Winner. But all of this is always, in a very adapted Quad Prep way.
And I know we defined executive functioning. I don't know if we've explained the kinds of social skills challenges that your students present with. Do you want to briefly say what sorts of social skills challenges do you mean?
Our students, all of our students, have the desire to have friends, to be social. It is important for them. These are the students that we can help the most. Not all of them know how to do it, though. So how do I make friends? How do I join in different activities? What is appropriate for me to say? What is not appropriate for me to say? How do I have reciprocal conversation and ask follow-up questions when people are asking me things? And how do I sustain this conversation? All of these are conflict management, right? When there's a disagreement, how do I disagree in appropriate ways? What is the right language to use?
Very important skills. What makes a TUI program a good one?
All of the above that we have discussed. At the end of the day, I really believe that for a TUI school, nothing should be written in stone. A school has to be very flexible in their ways. And no one who says that they have figured it all out can be true, for a population of students like this. So I think flexibility, I think being open-minded, having a lot of professional development, be very creative, have advanced problem-solving skills, in a school's leadership. I believe these to be very important characteristics of a good TUI school. And, of course, the most important factor is the staff and faculty, the people who are in the classrooms. They have to be passionate about what they do. They really need to feel passionate about this profile of students, to be flexible and creative in their ways. You can never go into a TUI class and have a plan and feel that you will always stick to this plan. You have to be flexible.
This may or may not make it into the final audio. I'm a Tony Robbins fan. I don't know if you follow Tony Robbins at all.
I don't, actually.
But he has a phrase, live with passion. And I think that applies here, right? We're talking about students who are living their student lives with passion. We're talking about the teachers who are living their teacher lives with passion. They need to bring that to the classroom in working with their students. It sounds like it's a very important quality for the staff in these programs.
Very important. Everyone needs to be passionate. And, a lot of parents are asking us, are your teachers all special ed trained, for example? And at the lower school, most of them are, but it's not an actual requirement for us. First of all, because we have a huge sort of psychosocial staff that can focus on these areas. But the most important thing is that our students can be brilliant in some areas, and we need content experts. We also need people that will not be intimidated by something like that. If a student asks a question and the teacher does not know, they will be very open to exploring it. Let's find out. I don't know. Let's find out together. You need to be passionate and feel very comfortable to be able to do this.
That's great. Anna, can you share some anecdotes or success stories?
That is a favorite one because I am very lucky to meet a lot of families, and I have met a lot of TUI families in those almost 8 years that I've been in this position. The stories are amazing, and the stories that we hear from the staff are really great. I personally very much enjoy hearing parents telling me after they have joined our community how they feel accepted, they feel understood, how the students feel successful. So that is the most important part, I have to say. Of course, our students have had very impressive college acceptances, and that's a very easy way of thinking about success. We have an alumna who is on the dean's list at Carleton College. We've had acceptances to Brown, to Carnegie Mellon, NYU Tandem, so Swarthmore. So to see those students thriving in places like this is just unbelievably rewarding and makes us really happy. But at the end of the day, why we do all of this and what makes us happy professionals is to see happy students. And just a very recent anecdote is that last week I hosted a professionals tour, and it was a group of professionals. One of them was the lower school head of a private mainstream school in Manhattan. And on the course of the tour, as we were walking around, she saw 2 of her former students who have joined our school. And they were very happy to see her. You could tell that she was a gifted professional. And because the kids hugged her, they were very, very happy to see her. And at the end of the tour, when she thanked me about the tour right before she left, she told me that in all of these days that she used to see these students in her school, she had never seen them smile. And she had never seen them being so happy. And, I feel emotional just even talking about this to you now, because that is really why we do what we do. That is what energizes us.
Can you connect the dots in that story? So what was it? What were these students struggling with at the previous school that was standing in their way, and what did your school provide to them that allowed them to break through and demonstrate that happiness that you just articulated?
Mm-hmm. And I don't know if I can be very specific to these two particular students, but most of the times it is being socially excluded, feeling like the odd man out, feeling that you're different from other students, feeling that you're failing academically and not really understanding why, feeling that they want to leave the classroom because it doesn't make sense to them, or they're not interested in what is being discussed, or it's been taught to students in ways that don't make sense to them. So this is very different in our school because our students are taught in very small groups when we're talking about pure academic time. And for each of the subjects, we teach them exactly at the level that they need to be taught. We have students who can be in second grade. This is actually true. For this academic year, we have a second grader who works with our 11th grade math teacher.
Wow.
From the upper school, because that's his level and that's what we're going to give him.
Wow.
And at the same time, they might need remediation in other areas. Writing, for example, is a common difficulty for our students. Talking about executive functioning skills before, that is a very complicated task for them. And also their minds go so fast that it can be very irritating for them how slowly they actually produce written text. So all of these things change tremendously when you are in a very small group and you have access to the ways that you learn.
And I'll just say, based on my experience as a legal practitioner, I've seen that the not understanding why that you mentioned can be a big factor when children are struggling and they're making up stories as to why they're struggling. They think they're dumb or incapable or broken. These are all terms that I've heard a lot over the last 14 years. It's very unsettling not to know the reason. And I've seen when they get that clarity as to why they're struggling, whether it's because they're 2E or for some other reason, and then they get into the right program that understands them, and now they can target those areas of difficulty. They make tremendous strides, and their self-esteem and confidence increases significantly because now they have a path and an understanding and a self-awareness as to what's going on and what they need to do to improve.
Absolutely. It is liberating. And also we have very trained staff that can really help them with exploring that identity. What does it mean to be 2E? What does it mean to have autism? What does it mean to have ADHD? These are all things that we discuss with our students. And, when they find out about it, they hear it and they can identify themselves through that. And it's liberating. It really is.
We, at my firm, we've had parents come to our office and they really, really want to keep their child in a mainstream school setting with special education teacher support services or therapies such as counseling, speech and language therapy, occupational therapy. How should parents go about determining if that sort of setting is viable or if it's time to transition to a special education setting that is specifically designed for 2E students?
This is such a great question, and a question that comes up very regularly. In my job, a lot of parents are asking me, for that guidance. And of course, it is so difficult to know because every child has their own individual path. And again, back to what we were talking about, masking gifts, masking the difficulties masking the gifts. It is very difficult sometimes to determine this. And it is also, I think, natural to parents to want to try mainstream. That is a tendency. I'm a parent myself. That would be always my first tendency for my child, and especially, for these students who are brilliant. They're so smart. Why not? And it is true that a lot of schools can provide some of the services, but the difference is that these services are provided outside the classroom. These students might miss something that is happening in the classroom to have access to these related services. So that makes a huge difference because students are starting to believe that they are different. As you said before, they're starting to believe that something is wrong with them. They don't understand. We have students with an IQ of 130 that say to their parents that they feel stupid. Really, this is something that I hear from parents all the time. What a shame this is, isn't it? So there is no actual answer to this that can be applicable to all of the students. From our experience, the most important, my 2 cents here that I can contribute is that early intervention can make a huge difference for our students. The moment we added the kindergarten class in our school, we really saw a tremendous change for students that had access to appropriate supports from an early age. They never had to fail in school, and that is so important. You can prevent them from developing secondary difficulties, low self-esteem, depression, that can happen later on. So these are all the considerations that people should think, but again, nothing applies to all.
I want to underscore that point. I think it's really important. Parents sometimes ask us, do we have to wait for our child to fail to make a change? Or do we have to try out a program that we know is inappropriate? And the answer to both questions is no. You don't have to wait for your child to fail. You don't have to try a program you know is inappropriate. And I think the risk is exactly what you just said, that if it's inappropriate and they're left there, they could start to feel badly about themselves. Their self-esteem could plummet. And I've seen students go into a downward spiral as a result of being in the wrong program for a period of time. So parents, if you're out there listening, just know that you get to rely on your experts in determining what's appropriate and what's not, and you don't have to wait for your child to fail to make a change that you know is necessary.
I could not agree more, and it is very positive that you are able to say this to your clients because it holds true, and 1 year, 1 academic year can make a huge difference for one child. We're talking about so many months of their lives, and especially in ages that can be so life-determining, as you said. And we see this all the time with our students, and especially the ones who are applying to our school after they have changed, a couple of different educational environments, and that they have never felt successful.
Mm-hmm. Anna, is there anything else you'd like our listeners to know?
I believe we covered a lot of important 2E issues, and I really hope that this was a very useful conversation for parents who have students that have a similar profile. I think I really want to stress, I cannot stress enough what a unique population of children this is, and how lucky we feel at Quad Prep to be serving a population like this. Are fascinating kids. Every day is different, and every day is really exciting in our school. And the right environment does make a difference for these students.
Absolutely. I'll echo that loudly. How can our listeners learn more about you and Quad Prep?
Our website, I think, is the best way of being introduced to what Quad Prep is. And of course, admissions is always open, and we're very welcoming. I personally meet on a one-to-one with a lot of families that might have specific questions about the school, and I can guide them through the process the best way I can.
Finally, before we wrap up, are there any resources you can recommend on the subject of 2E education?
There is obviously not one book that can give you all the information or article that you need about Twice Exceptional. There is a book that we really like. It is written by to a parent. Her name is Deborah Reber, and the book is called Differently Wired. And I believe this to be a good start in understanding the profile of these students. It's a really sort of fascinating book, and it really makes you to truly accept, the child for who they are. And as parents, you know how difficult this can be, when something is different. It's very hard for a parent to be able to accept and embrace this in different ways. And our head of school, Kim Busey, is a psychiatrist who used to be an assistant professor at NYU before she started the school. So she has also contributed to a lot of articles over the years. So that's another way of getting introduced. Our school, we organize a conference called Breakthroughs every year. And this is really for Twice Exceptional, open to the whole community. That's actually a professional development for our staff. And obviously our parents are invited. So that's another way of hearing presentations and different aspects of this field.
Excellent. Anna, thank you so much for being here today. It's been great having this conversation with you. It's also been great getting to know you over the years. I want to thank you for the wonderful work that you do to help TUI students, and I look forward to being in touch in the future.
Thank you so much for having me. It was really a pleasure, and really thank you for raising awareness for this population of children that sometimes can be overlooked.
Absolutely. That's what we're here for.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to Curious Incident, a podcast for special needs families. Don't forget to subscribe for a new episode every month. For more resources and helpful information, check out our website and blog at dionlawfirm.com. This podcast provides general information which is not intended to and does not constitute legal advice. You should not rely on this information for any purpose. For legal counsel, you should consult with an attorney to discuss your specific circumstances. Your listening to this podcast does not create an attorney-client relationship between you and the law offices of Adam Dion, PLLC. No attorney-client relationship is established unless a retainer agreement has been executed between the client and the law offices of Adam Dion. This podcast may constitute attorney advertising. Prior results do not guarantee a similar outcome. Any guests featured or resources mentioned on this podcast are for information purposes and are not endorsed by the law offices of Adam Dion, PLLC.